Good morning, everyone. Please stand. Prior to opening the meeting, our Kamatua Tamo Pakaia will be carrying out a blessing, and then the Venerable Stephen Black will do a reading. Thank you.
E te atua kaharawa koe nei mātou e whakawhetai ki a koe ke uria te koro ai o te aroha ki ronga i a mātou i tēnei rangi. Ko ngā kupu i puta mai i a te whero kia mau ki te ture, te whakapono me te aroha, anei te aroha ki a koe e te kaihanga. Ko koe tō mātou piringa nau ngā kupu katoa i hora, ko te rangi Māori, ko te manāti tangata, ko te aroha, ko te kotahitanga, koe nei mātou e whakawhetai ki a koe kia uhia te rākoro wai i rungi te tangata e takahi te mata o te whenua. Nō reire e te atua kaharawa, manāti kia mātou hoki i rungi te tika me te pono, i rungi te ingoa tō mātou kai whakahora, o ake, pai māti te kia.
Ngā mihi kia koutou, ata Māori e. Today the church remembers Chad, a saint from the north of England. He began his life as an abbot in the little village of Lastingham in the beautiful county of York, and in time he became a bishop and then a larger bishop. Arguably he had terms of reference not unlike your terms of reference, perhaps with a little more Jesus. The reading set aside for today, which is from the New Living Translation, so you keep up this time as well, talks about the kind of responsibility that you carry, and it comes from the prophet Jeremiah. The Lord gave another message to Jeremiah. He said, "Go down to the shop where clay pots and jars are made. I will speak to you while you are there." So I did as he told me, and found the potter working at his wheel. But the jar he was making did not turn out as he had hoped. So the potter squashed the jar into a lump of clay and started again. Then the Lord gave me this message, "O Israel, can I not do to you as this potter has done to this clay? As the clay is in the potter's hand, so are you in my hand." So, as you work with the clay of Kirikiriroa, may you have the wisdom to know when to start again, and may you be thankful for the opportunity to shape our future. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you. Please seat.
So thank you, Tame, and thank you to the Reverend Phil. So we'll open the council meeting of the 2nd of August 2018. It's 9:38 a.m. We'll start with apologies. We have apologies for Councillor Casson, Councillor Henry and Councillor Pascoe. Moved by Councillor Mallett, seconded by Councillor Bunting. All those for, any against? Carried. Confirmation of agenda. I'll pass over to the Democracy Manager, Leanne.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Kia ora tātou. This morning the agenda is confirmed, noting the following: that the debate will be 2 minutes with an extension of 1 minute if required. and that there is flexibility needed to the order of items, specifically item 20, Māori representation review, which is to be taken pending the arrival of our external presenter, if he can get here, currently delayed by fog. Thank you.
Moved by, yes.
Sorry. I'm just, you know what I'm like with resolutions and keeping information. The council report schedule that we have that's uploaded onto OneDrive, there are 2 items that were from resolutions that were supposed to be reported to this meeting. One was the deferred update on the river plan. It said, the last resolution that I have on the book says due for the August council meeting, and then the other one was the safety strategy action list is supposed to come to council, but I believe it's going to C&S. The resolution says it's coming to council, so I do keep bringing these matters up in terms of resolutions, so I'd just like to, yeah, what can we do about that?
Let me follow it up, Councillor Angela.
Okay. It would be great if the schedule was
referenced to.
populated with those resolutions, and then I can raise it
Okay, thank you for
earlier
raising that,
and
Councillor Angela.
offline. Yeah, thanks.
Moved by Councillor, sorry, Councillor Dove.
Yes, I wish to raise the timing of item 20. While I understand the external presenter is a lawyer, and while it's always lovely to have lawyers presenting to council, I think to wait on someone because of the fog today will be such an unknown quantity that it's probably not worth doing that, given that both Auckland and Hamilton airports seem to be closed at the moment for some time to come. So unless we know early on, I think we should go ahead with that, because we obviously have a large group of the public here to observe that item, and it would be best to do that while they're here rather than forcing people to wait all day or come back at an indeterminate time. We just don't know whether those airports will open.
So the first item I'm going to take after public forum, and public forum is likely to go for 3/4 of an hour, is the Audit New Zealand report, because we have those external presenters there. Then we'll have a cup of tea, and at that stage Democracy Manager will follow up as to the whereabouts of our external, and we'll make a decision at that stage. So it's unlikely that the paper on Māori representation, iwi representation, will be heard until late morning, just so people can plan their day, and we'll assess after morning tea and report back at that stage. Did you want to add anything, Leanne? Confirmation of agenda moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor. All those for? Any against? Carried. Declaration of interest. There's no declaration of interest. Public forum, I'll hand over to the Democracy Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. We have a number of people wanting to speak in public forum this morning, so when I call your name, please come forward to one of the 2 chairs there. The microphone will activate automatically, so you don't need to worry about pushing any buttons. You have 3 minutes, including time for questions. A bell will go at 2 minutes, and the final bell at 3 minutes. Okay. Sean Brooker. Sean is the principal of Hamilton Christian School, and he is here speaking to an item in the public excluded part of the agenda, C3 Rotatuna Town Centre Area Q, Park Lane. Welcome, Sean.
So,
can we just have some guidance of what we can and cannot ask, or what we can't? Because this is obviously a confidential matter.
I will be
okay.
letting Sean speak, and I won't be taking any questions on this matter.
Okay, thank you.
Due to the fact that it's
Confidentiality. Okay.
So, Sean, you have 3 minutes to speak. The clock is on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, and you'll see that counting down. And that includes questions. In your case, I won't be taking questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Kia ora. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. With 420 students, Hamilton Christian School is a school like many schools who seek to be a place for community. We host many sports fixtures, churches, language schools, local autistic group, use our buildings all for a minimal fee that barely covers the costs of their power. People from the community are regularly on our property for football, basketball, tennis and other activities. However, the world around us has begun to change. We have just received notification that our address will no longer be RD1. In fact, our new address will be for North City Road, a road that we very shortly will not even have access to because of the development of the new town centre. With the development of North City Road, we have been fortunate to have had council staff visit and keep us well informed on what is happening around us. However, I do not think a meeting has gone by with our council staff that we haven't asked questions about aspects of Area Q. We have been told each time that time would come for this discussion. Unlike the meetings that we have had with the council in the past couple of years about North City Road, we have no records of similar meetings being held about section that is called Area Q. While members of our board and community attended general meetings for consultation when the land was first designated as high density, it is obvious that them then and many others probably had little understanding of what high density residential actually meant for Hamilton City. Our request is simple. We do not know what dictates that this particular piece of land needs to be designated high density, but we are hoping that it can be reviewed. We understand that there has been some form of consultation many years ago, but as the direct neighbour of this place, we are unable to find where our views are represented in this plan. We're concerned that 53 high-density houses will create an incredible barrier between us and the sports facilities that the council staff have made clear are part of the whole community, for the whole community, including HCS. We are concerned that we have not had fair chance to be consulted in this development. We are concerned that as a not-for-profit community service, we have been priced out of this land by the council's ambition to monetize this particular specific piece of land. We are concerned that we are not able to find any other examples of high-density residential property significantly bordering any other school in Hamilton. We are concerned that what the council considers passive security in the short term will turn into a security risk in the long term as low-rent terraced houses deteriorate, as in many other parts of New Zealand. However, if the council does decide that there is a need for high-density space, we would hope that the council would consider other uses as well alongside that. I understand that there are now goals around money.
Just wrap it up there, please.
Last paragraph.
Yeah.
We understand that there are goals around money for the council in this area. However, I trust that, like many of us who serve communities closest to us, that the council will look past the money and let us court it all together.
Lovely, thank you, Sean. Just going forward, we will ring a bell at 2 minutes, so you know you have 1 minute left to go. So sorry, we normally do that. In this case, it didn't happen. So thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, council.
So we do have a lot of people to get through, and so I am going to be very firm on the 3 minutes. So when you get to the 2 minutes, you do need to keep an eye on the clock and ensure that you have wrapped up by the time we get to the 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Our next speaker this morning is Warwick Mitchie. Warwick is speaking to item 20, Māori Representation Review Proposal. Thank you, Warwick.
Good morning. I've come about the Maori representation issue. I feel I really should ask for a minute's silence, because this we're having is a nail in the coffin of democracy, and it's the council giving okay to doing things on a racially discriminatory basis. Anybody who qualifies on the electoral roll has the same power and status, and they should not be judged by race, colour or creed. The document you've got took 14 months, and God knows how much it cost in terms of staff and how many hours, and dozens of meetings at Marae and other places. I've paid rates in this city for 40 years plus and voted in this city for 40 years plus. I get 3 minutes, absolutely no consultation whatsoever. And I think from the council that's a kick in the guts, quite honestly. How do I become a major stakeholder if 40 years doesn't qualify me to get some consultation on these matters? Tainui headquarters is in Ngarawahia, which is in the Waikato District Council. They have 70,000 beneficiaries. How many are actually living in Hamilton and qualified on those roles to vote, etc.? Were any of the team that compiled this report of Tainui beneficiaries? Are they, Tainui beneficiaries? And how many of them actually live in this area? Technically, a Tainui beneficiary living in Sydney has as good a representation to the Finance Committee as I do, and I don't think that that is right and not right under democracy. One could pick all sorts of questions out of the report and do it, but there is no time with 3 minutes, and there's misinformation, falsehoods, etc. in there. This matter, I believe, in fairness to everybody and treating people equally, should be raised at an election or done by a referendum. Thank you.
Councillor Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchie. Did you raise any questions or complaints about the appointment of non-elected accountants to the Audit and Risk Committee of Council?
The Audit and Risk Committee people are not put in there on a racial basis. They are put in there on the basis of skill and trying to help the council to do something on a specific thing. That is not a race-based appointment. That is a skill-based appointment.
Skill, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
Our next speaker in public forum this morning is Piri Kaio. Piri, if you'd like to come forward to the microphone. Piri is speaking to item 20, Māori Representation Review Proposal. Welcome.
Thank you. Your Worship, the Mayor and councillors, good morning. As by way of introduction, I was on Hamilton City Council for 3 terms from 1986 to 1995. While on council, I was the chairperson of the Recreation Services Committee and the Māori Standing Committee, Ngā Hui Haumi. And when I talk about the draft proposal for Māori participation in council, I want to express great disappointment that the draft report has no reference to the historical time when Ngā Hui Haumi was a standing committee of council. It is as though it never existed. I am greatly disappointed that there is no mention of what council had in place during that time. It almost wipes out the memory and the importance of the partnership and relationship between Māori during that period. And I want to acknowledge the people that were involved. Our Dame Te Ata Tairangi, a Tairangi Kahu, Māori Queen, her husband Whatumoana Paki, Hare Poke, Wikoke Kingi, so many people. And we want to forget those important people. We want to forget and pretend that Ngā Hui Haumi did not exist. There is no reference to what that committee stood for in council during our time. Those relationships and partnerships that existed were with Tainui Waikato, Te Runanga o Kirikiriroa Marae Committee, and we should never forget that Hamilton City Council has already had experience in that area. So today we are addressing the major matter of Māori participation in council, and it's a shame that we only have 3 minutes to address this major, important historical event. And Your Worship, I do want to acknowledge that council has taken the very courageous step to address this issue, be it by legislation. It is not race-based, and it's tiring to hear that comment over and over. Thank you.
Thank you. No, the 3 minutes is up.
Next speaker this morning is Margaret Evans. Margaret, please come forward. Margaret's also speaking to the item on Māori representation. Welcome.
Kia ora tātou. I begin by noting that the Council today does not have just one choice as presented in the report before you. You actually have two choices. The report suggests you support the concept of iwi representatives with one Mata Waka representative on the committee. The original discussions on this matter suggested you should be agreeing to Māori representatives, which is not the same. Although, I hasten to point out, bearing in mind the extensive representation you have here today, that does not exclude mana whenua, it does not exclude Waikato Tainui representatives from being chosen. The second point I wish to make is that it is absolutely essential that there is a robust, open and transparent public nomination and selection process for these committee representatives. It is simply not adequate in the law today that governs local government to say tikanga allows this matter to be conducted by tribal representatives and by the runanga. So that's my summary. Can I add to what Pirihira has said? And I want to quote from Ngāpari Hopa, who's not well today and doesn't think she would stop coughing if she spoke. We have come too far not to go further. You have done too much not to do more. That's a quote from Sir James Henare. And as Pirihira has already reminded you, there has been a standing committee in this council during my term as mayor, Ngahui Homi. It's also worthwhile mentioning that we brought in Shane Jones to bring the warring parties together. Tribal politics are very robust. That's actually very healthy. But at the end of the day, your job representing this city is to decide in law what is the best way to ensure the voice of Māori is heard around this council table. I think your basic shape of representatives on the committee is the second best choice. Obviously, direct election would be best, but that's not happening. So putting members onto committees is a good thing to do and essential to ensure the interests of Māori in this city are well protected. I finally want to commend staff for the work that they have done in attempting to create mechanisms that will ensure top quality representatives. But I repeat, please take the choice of Māori representatives and a robust and open selection process.
Thank you, Margaret.
Rawiri Bidwa, you're next. Rawiri is from Taha o Te Whenua o Kirikiriroa, and he's here speaking to Māori Representation Review proposal. Kia ora, Rawiri.
Kia ora koutou. Hear me? Can you hear me? Yep. Kia ora, Mr. Mayor. I'm here representing Taha o Te Whenua o Kirikiriroa. We are a subset of Waikato Tainui. By way of our 5 hapus are the hapus who claim pre-colonisation connections to the land and the waters of Hamilton City. We have been working with Waikato Tainui and we have been working with Te Runanga o Kirikiriroa for the last 15 months now. And you will recall 12 months ago we came here assisting you make the decision around Māori wards and saved you a whole lot of money by not having to go to the referendum. So hopefully we'll do something similar today. But I think importantly, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, is that over the last 12-15 months we have come to the conclusion that we are united on the motion, on the recommendation that's being put forward to Council today. Why are we united? Because we've been all working on it for the last 12 to 15 months. As others have put it, as second choice to Māori wards. Why do we like it? We think it's a great move in terms of enabling Māori representation on something which has some way and some means of making decisions on behalf of the city people. So we ask ourselves, what have we got to bring? Māori have rights and, as you say, interests, and they are entrenched in the laws of this land. They are entrenched in the Treaty of Waitangi. They are entrenched in the United Nations declarations of da-da-da-da-da-da. So we're not talking about racism, we're not talking about privilege, we're talking about the law. And so all we're doing is trying to, like everybody else, do the best by the law and by the law of the land for the people of the land. You might ask the question, why would we want to, what is it that we can bring to these committees? Well, let's think about it. Our 5 Māori councillors are equivalent to one base remuneration of one elected councillor. So 5 equals 1. So every one of us is only 20%. So hey, what's the problem here? Secondly, what can they bring? If they're elected from within, then they have a particular focus. Then they can bring that focus and that information to the table for debate. Diversity of debate is a good thing. And of course, wait for the decision thereafter. So, Your Worship.
Could you just conclude there, please?
Yes. So Your Worship, I have the habit of Mr. Chair, but okay, you're the same fellow, we know that. I think, Mr. Chair, that this has got nothing to do with race, privilege, and all that. It's got to do with the law. It's got to do with what we think we can provide or bring to the city and the people of the city, not only today, but also for the long term. So I'll leave those thoughts with you, Your Worship and councillors, and thank you very much for the opportunity. Like Pat and like Margaret, 3 minutes seems a long time, but it ain't. And I wish we had some more time. Kia ora tātou.
Thank you, Rawati.
Sunny Martinga. Sunny's from Ngāti Tama e Nupo, and he is speaking to our Māori Representation Review. Kia ora, Sunny.
Tēnā koe, te kaikaraki e te rangatira i tamai, whakamoemeti i te rungarawa. Tēnā koe, te koro mātua, mātua anaru. Tēnā koe, te kaunihera o kirikiri ro. Tēnā tātou katoa. I've come here with a big list, but however, I will just speak from my heart today. Firstly, I'm a representative of the Hapu Tamani Pool. My tūpuna goes way back to the late 1500s. He was given this whenua around this place by the great chief Ngāti Mahanga. And up until the 1850s, my hapu did have a say still around in the city, but because of the effects of the war, a lot of my tūpunas fought in the Māori War. And then on their retreat, they came back to Hamilton, Ngaruawahia, and were either to sign up with the government at that time or face prison. A lot of my tūpunas went to prison, and a lot of them moved with Tāwhiao into the King Country. Now those years have gone by, and we're coming to this stage now in this era. We've lost our history for about 70 years, and we're just actually coming back into the fold to do with kirikiri now. And in saying so, I see a great privilege for this Māori wards in a way that we have beneficiaries from Waihapu living in the city, and we contribute in many ways. And I think this sort of looks at it as it's not a payback, but as an inspirational to our people that have gone through those hard times and coming into this era, an opportunity for our people to have a voice in sitting on the City Council. In saying that, I'd just like to say that the decision making's with you, and our beneficiaries who supported this council in the city, and will also support the 4 seats on the representation of the council. So without anything further to say, I'd just like to thank you for this opportunity to express on behalf of Waihapu our feelings and the way forward for our beneficiaries and for our people in the city. Kia ora tātou.
Thank you.
Andrea Elliott. Andrea is the CE of Te Runanga o Kirikiriroa, speaking to item 20. Welcome, Andrea.
Atamari e koutou katoa. In the first instance, I just want to acknowledge Mary and Glenn, who were our representatives in and around the various discussions related to this particular kaupapa. I also want to acknowledge Mona and his team for the various hours that were put in to complete the options paper that I understand are before you all today. And I also want to acknowledge the previous presenters that have come forward this morning. With the exception of one, my understanding is that everyone is very positive about the prospect and possibility of Māori representation across the various committees. As people have also mentioned, 3 minutes is a very short space of time, and so I'm here today on behalf of the Runanga to merely reaffirm some of the key points that have come through, both via the discussions but also in the options paper. From our perspective, the kōrero and the paper itself is well set out in terms of the rationale, the methodology, and what the intended processes are moving forward. As Rawiri and others have mentioned, we're united alongside mana whenua in our agreement around the option 2 recommendation, that is the inclusion of Māori representatives on the various committees. I should also mention that under our particular constitution and mandate of the Runanga, we are charged to progress the interests of mātāwaka in Hamilton City and the surrounding areas. And so advocacy and representation, of which this is part, is very important to us. And we also agree with the idea of Māori representation at this time, in this manner, because we believe that it will provide genuine Māori participation of a type that's not seen at present. So that's all I have to say at this time.
Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Last speaker in public forum this morning is Tame Pakaya. Tame, if you wouldn't mind coming forward. Tame has, unfortunately, the representative of Waikato Tainui could not be here this morning and has asked Tame to read their statement. Thank you.
Tēnā koe te koro matua, ngā mema o te kaunihera. ngā mea o te hāpore he piko he tariwha, tēnei te mihi atu kia koutou. On behalf of Waikato Tainui, we have I'll read the letter first and I'll make a couple of comments. I probably don't need 3 minutes to explain where we sit in the tribe. But this letter is from Maraea Tūkere from Waikato Tainui, and it reads, he honore gloria he maunga rongo ki te mata o te whenua he whakaaro pai ki ngā tangata katoa pai Māori. Honour and glory and peace reign upon the earth, and good thoughts to all mankind. We note that the Council are considering the Māori Representation Review proposal this Thursday, the 2nd of August. Unfortunately, due to our hosting of the Iwi Chairs Forum, we are unable to send a representative along to the hui. However, we would like you to note our full support for the proposal. We have worked closely with your team, with Mana Whenua and with Te Runanga o Kirikiriroa in the development of these proposals. We are pleased to note the progressive action that your team has taken to respond to the issue of Māori representation, as this is one of our strategic priorities that was discussed with the Mayor and members of the Joint Committee at our last meeting. We would be pleased if you could table this letter in support of the proposal and look forward to confirmation of a successful outcome. Ngā mihi nui, Marae Tūkere from Waikato Tainui. So I'd just like to close with one comment, and my comment is the goodwill shown by Queen Elizabeth in 1995. And if people don't know what she signed the Royal Assent, that was the apology for that footprint, and that footprint is the confiscation. So the contribution of the tribes of the Taniwha is the lands you sit on, that those ratepayers sit on. That is worth, in 1995, $12 billion. Waikato Tainui will not stop, they'll move forward in helping the city grow, whether it's at the base or at Ruakura. Huri no, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, e te koro matua.
Thank you, Tamu. Okay, we'll now move to item 8 on page 61. General Manager David Bryant and Lynn, if you could come forward to the front desk, please. So this item is the Audits New Zealand report, proposed Central City Park.
Good morning, Mayor Andrew, councillors. Just like to introduce our two guests. We have Lynn Dakin and Jared Williams from Audit New Zealand. I'll take the report as read, happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Gary.
Dates that are wrong in the report.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah.
Item number 6, it should be
Do they need to be
2018.
changed? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And a couple of years missing on dates, David?
Yes. Apologies for that.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Page 13 on the actual report.
76.
Sorry, 76. The last paragraph. Can we just? I didn't. When I read that, I read it a couple of times. I wasn't quite sure what that meant. Could you just explain that paragraph to me, please? And I have one other question.
Sorry, that was the last paragraph on page 76?
Yes, thank you.
So our discussions identified that the Chief Executive's discussions with the property owners, they had a vision for developing that particular area of their own, and it may have conflicted with the vision that the Mayor had. And in identifying that they had the vision for that area and had been having discussions with property owners, the Chief Executive was concerned that any further discussions he may have had would create an unfortunate potential area of competition, so he ceased discussions at that stage.
Do you want to come a bit closer?
Okay, thank you. I think I get where that is. Just in terms of the summary that there's no material advantage to anybody who potentially wants to sell property, that is at the time that this work was undertaken. Going forward is a different, we'll have a different process. You've talked about improving the process in terms of going forward. So no material advantage accrued to the property owners. That's a point in time statement, or can't reflect what might occur in the future. No.
So that reflects the situation up until the point at which the discussions became public. So any commercial advantage they may have had ceases at the point at which everybody knows about the proposal. The potential advantages going forward, and to which we refer, council will need to be consider is in the development of that area. You'll need to consider appropriate procurement processes to make sure that there are no ongoing advantages provided to anyone.
Right, because of the value of that land for what its future purpose might be. Yep. Thank you.
Councillor Angela.
Oh, goodness. Thank you. Look, thanks for your report. I found it easy to read. Just a few questions for clarification. You mentioned in the report that during the investigation, the process to develop this particular proposal was different to the processes for other proposals. I couldn't find anything in the report that really went far enough to tell me how different it was. Can you explain that?
It was different because of the urgency and the lack of information that was brought to the table at the time that the proposal was being considered. That was different to other proposals being developed, but we'd understood that that was because of the urgency and the commercial situation around those particular properties that explained that difference in process.
And when you say urgency, you mean you're referring to putting the proposal into the works to be considered with the LTP?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. In one part of the report, you acknowledge a mayor's role, or the mayor's role in leading budgets and plans, but then you also go on to say that there may have been a blurring of lines between governance and management. So can you just tell me where you think the lines were blurred? You make comment about
correct
an architect, the mayor having a preference for architects, but then that, for me, that's in conflict with you acknowledge the mayor's role in leading budgets and plans.
The mayor has a role in leading the LTP from a governance perspective. The lines between management and governance are sometimes difficult to determine with clarity. We're suggesting that there may have been a blurring. Our report noted that as it wasn't the focus of our report. It was something that we observed along the way. We didn't do a governance review, so we've noted that item, and it's something that we think the council can consider further in determining what those lines are.
Okay. The next couple of questions are just standard, really, audit questions that we ask of auditors at any time. Were there any matters of fact or accuracy that were changed from the draft report to the final report? So these are not natural justice ones, these are...
Just natural justice.
So our report was...
That were material, sorry.
So our report was delivered in draft to provide an opportunity to identify any factual matters that were incorrect, and we did make some corrections on that basis. In normal process of a review like this, we don't necessarily identify everything in discussions. It's only when something is written down that you identify that further facts come forward that prove it incorrect. So we did make a number.
So I can give you an example of one that I requested, just so you can get a flavour for it. So when we did our discussions, I got my dates wrong, in terms of the meetings I was present at, Councillor Mallett. I was pointing at you, and when the report came back, it had that I attended a meeting in October, and it would have been an opportunity for me to have updated council at that point in time. However, I wasn't even in the city in the October meeting. The Deputy Chief Executive was hosting the meeting, so I provided a copy of my diary notes and an update to Audit New Zealand to validate that I wasn't there. They updated the report appropriately to reflect the fact I couldn't have briefed council if I wasn't in the city. So that's an example of facts being updated.
And you did email, I remember receiving an email from you telling us about that. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah, so that's probably a good indication of the facts. Audit New Zealand is their report. They only change items where it can be proven that it's not factually correct. So there's no questions of anyone changing from a natural justice point of view. It's a fact-based process, and that's why it's an iterative process, make sure we get it right.
So that's answered my question in terms of nothing material. Yeah. And all the information that, and I appreciate that with any audit, you audit the information that you're giving and that you request. Was there any information that you requested that wasn't able to be found, that wasn't supplied?
No.
Great. Last question. The report talks about the care needed when drafting resolutions, and this is something that I raise quite a lot. Does this pose a risk for council in other areas with our current resolutions? Is there there are very few recommendations in the report. Is there something that we can be doing? Is there some kind of a stock take of resolutions we need to do based on that comment in the report?
I couldn't draw a general comment on council resolutions simply because we didn't do a general review of that. It's simply that there was some discussion about what a resolution may have meant in a subsequent meeting, and that's what we're picking up on in terms of clarity of resolutions.
Okay.
One of the challenges I can offer here is that quite often, I can make general statements, quite often the debate in the chamber that's going on doesn't necessarily all the time get reflected in the resolution we put up. And it's something I'm very conscious of, and it's something that myself and the governance manager work very hard, and that's why you get us sequestered away in the corner for 15 minutes trying to write a sentence of 15 words. It's quite an art to get the resolutions right. In this case, that's what's been identified by Audit New Zealand, we didn't quite get it right. But it is a focus point that we take very seriously to try it, and we will continue to focus on it going forward.
Yeah, great. Sorry, I just had one other question. Recommendation 4, which is on page 15, and this is specific to the Central City Park proposal. The report talks about, are there any risks associated with this particular recommendation going forward? Because obviously the proposal is on the books and in the budget and planned for the future. Is there something that, you've identified there could be risks with it. Is there something that we can be doing extra to manage that risk better?
I think if council applies its procurement policies appropriately in any procurement of works to develop the park, then that should be appropriate.
And did you, in that, with that answer, Lynn, did you look at because we have a procurement policy, the proposal at the time wasn't about writing a cheque and going out and purchasing, it was considering the overall project. So did you look at the procurement proposal? Was the resolution that was on the books as a result of this project inconsistent with that?
No, we didn't look at the procurement policy. No, the resolutions did not have any consideration of future procurements. All we're suggesting is that because you've had particular parties involved in discussions, you may need to consider those matters in future procurements.
Okay, all right, yeah, great, thank you.
Okay, I understand a member may have a motion they wish to put up.
Mayor Andrews? And, governance have got it.
Mayor Andrews asked me to read out the motion, or the motion being put forward. So at the moment it says that the council receives the report and notes the need for compliance with the report template for proposals requiring a decision from the council, and notes that in the event of a verbal report, any proposal requiring a council decision is compliant with the decision-making requirements under the Local Government Act 2002.
I can explain without debate, if members want that at this point.
We'll just hold for a minute.
Yep.
Accept the second at this stage. It needs to come through the chair.
Okay, sorry. I was just doing my due diligence.
Okay, Angela, go ahead.
Yeah, without debate at this point, just to explain, this is just the comment in the report from the auditor made a comment around our, well, I don't know if the words were actually template, our framework for making decisions. We do have a framework that comes to us all the time, so B acknowledges that and just reminds us that we need to be compliant with that. I discussed this and got advice from the governance manager and help from her. So that's all B is about. And C is, in the absence of fuller information from staff, that we are any proposal requiring council decision that is compliant with the decision-making requirements under the Local Government Act. And that's quite clear in the Local Government Act, and just all this is doing, again, without debate, because I'll save that, is reminding us of our obligations with decision-making. That's what this does.
Great recommendation from Audit New Zealand, ensuring that we get our recommendations right.
Yes.
For B, notes the need for compliance with the report template for written reports. Is what you're implying for B? If that relates to written reports,
Yes,
Councillor
it does.
O'Leary?
Yep, yep.
Okay, I just think we need to note that in B,
Yeah.
because there will be time from time where verbal reports are required, and
Yep. Which is C.
Yeah, I just want to distinguish B as for written reports.
No, that's exactly right.
If that's okay, the governance manager, can we just update that for that aspect, please?
Yeah.
If that's okay with the mover.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the intent.
Yeah.
And that, I'm seconding that as the chair. Yes, questions?
Good on him.
Yeah, I'm taking the deputy mayor first. He's, okay. Councillor Gary.
Thank you. With all due respect, is this just saying we have to follow the law and follow our policies?
What's wrong with that?
Well,
So it's redundant. Is it redundant or not?
us.
I mean, I don't think anyone would disagree with it, but it's just saying we have to follow our policies and we have to follow the law.
Us, that's the
So why do
democracy
we?
manager.
At various times, the council may elect to remind itself or pay particular attention to points or aspects of your obligations and responsibilities that you think are important. So arguably it's redundant, arguably it's a good reminder, potentially if you feel the need to be reminded or to acknowledge those responsibilities.
Councillor Paula?
Are we in debate, Mr Mayor, or
No,
not?
we're in questions.
No, I thought questions had finished when the motion went up. Thank you.
Okay, we're in debate. Councillor Angela.
Yeah, look, thanks, Mayor Andrew. As we've seen in the audit report, the decision around the Central City Park proposal could have been done better, and we acknowledge that, and that is what this motion is all about. It is good to remind us of our responsibilities when we make decisions on behalf of the people of the city. I think that in part the proposal and the information or the lack of information was due to the verbal report, and that's why I had stated that in C as well. So I think that my motion, as much as possible, removes the risk of it happening again. And as I said, it's never a bad thing to be reminded. This is an opportunity to improve our processes, and we shouldn't be afraid of that. We should be supportive of that. That's all I have to say.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Of course, we weren't involved in the terms of reference we didn't see the terms of reference because I might have asked for a little bit of a focus on governance role in this. And just for the record, I personally, and I'm speaking in support of the motion, which I had hoped to second. Personally, I never raised concerns about the behaviour of the CE in this issue. What I did do, however, was ask about process and governance involvement, and I wanted the assurances about the process. This was, as was noted, very different to other LTP projects that we were considering at the time, and I wanted to be sure that everything was above board, correct, transparent and fair. The public, remember, had raised these concerns. The public were asking these questions, and it is, as Councillor O'Leary has alluded to, good governance and representation of ratepayers to ask questions. The report did indicate there were some blurred lines at governance level, and going forward it's going to be vitally important that we're squeaky clean. The proposal for the Central City Park has some very good elements around it, but we did not, nor do we have, a good business plan at this point in time. I voted accordingly at the time. However, a democratic decision was made in the LTP, and so now there is $7 million in the LTP for this project, and my focus will still be on proper process going forward. There can be no deals outside of proper process with public money. We need to ensure that we proceed openly in a planned way. And this report also suggests that we should deal with any conflicts of interest. Some owners, as we know, are willing to sell, and others, such as those in the Riverside Apartments, are not at all willing to sell. So what we do need is a short, medium and long-term plan for this area that delivers for the ratepayers in the most transparent way possible. One more sentence, sorry. On a positive note, very excited about the theatre, and I think that will be a huge impetus for further private property development, and I look forward to private property investment arising off the back of this public funded improvement.
So just a point of order on clarity, on accuracy. The report said that there may have been a blurring of the lines, not that anything was done wrong, and I just want to make that very clear, and I just want that to point that out in accuracy in the speech that just got made.
Use the word indicate, which
it may have been a blur, and it doesn't conclusively say there was wrong done. I just want to make that
I just said
very
it
clear.
indicated a concern.
Councillor Jeff.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Look, I'm pleased but not surprised by the results of this Audit New Zealand report. There's a Girls High, Boys High production starting on Saturday by Shakespeare called Much Ado About Nothing, and to me this is, very much sums up this whole issue. The report clearly states that there was no material advantage for the two property owners who I thought were completely unfairly singled out. The report clearly shows there was no wrongdoing of any sort by the CEO, who was continually unfairly attacked for this. What the investigation did show is what most of us already knew. It was a good faith process reflecting a sense of urgency to make the most of an opportunity to purchase land which was available in the most strategically important location in our city. But then the politicking got in the way. I would have thought a genuine river plan supporter would support any attempt to open up, or at least to retain the possibility of opening up land that in a most strategically important place in the city, to once and for all, after 100 years of ignoring the river, to open up Victoria Street to the river. But it didn't happen, and to me that just makes me wonder about things. I'm very pleased with the report today. It has completely vindicated the process and the CEO, and I won't be supporting the motion because to me it's a meaningless face-saving recommendation. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Martin.
I certainly want to commend Councillor Taylor on his very good summary in my view. In fact, he's put it much better than I can. I will, however, be supporting Mayor King and Councillor O'Leary's motion, and I acknowledge the Mayor King's strong support of this motion. Item C, let me say I'm not aware that in this case the requirements under the Local Government Act were broken at all. Let's make that crystal clear. Correct me now, anyone, if the requirements of the Local Government Act were speak up now or forever hold your peace. But obviously we always remind ourselves that we are under legislation. The irony is if we had actually moved to set up a property company, and while there are fors and against that particular approach to development in this area, the council processes are probably far more open and transparent, and that is very important that we have actually conducted ourselves. The very fact that we've got Audit New Zealand in to look at our processes, how can we improve them is important. However, the overall conclusions, let's stress, I'm not able to attend the play this week, much ado about nothing, but I will say the resolutions directing the actions, these are the overall conclusions of the audit, were reasonably clear. The Chief Executive acted on the Council instructions to the extent that he believed prudent and was achievable in the time strain. And this is the really critical one. And this is about natural justice. And I want to remind members, you are covered by qualified privilege in this chamber, but it is not unlimited privilege like in the Parliament of New Zealand. So to a degree, there are restrictions. We have identified no material advantages provided to the property owners the Chief Executive spoke to as a result of those discussions. And I will actually say that people in this country do have a right to sue if they feel that their reputations have been significantly maligned. And I want to remind members, and I'm being very helpful to you here, that qualified privilege only goes so far in protecting you as an individual. And I want to strongly deplore the loose talk that actually sullied or inadvertently or deliberately sullied reputations. And I want to stress that I think that's very important. And if we want to deal as a council with members of our community, we have to be very careful in what we say. And I'll make one final conclusion, picking up what Councillor Jeff said. Good local government is about people not sitting on the fence. It is about people making decisions, about being nimble. If you want to look at all good urban development, Wellington waterfront, Brisbane waterfront, Ipswich waterfront, all of these areas have involved a strong, focused local government to actually get into property development with the private sector in order to bring these things about. Not sitting on the fence, not waiting after report after report after report. It actually comes to a DUI to actually do stuff. I do, however, agree with Mayor King and Angela Leary that it is absolutely critical that we always remind ourselves that we follow good, rigorous process that it stands to scrutiny, and of course we are operating under the transparency and the accountability of the Local Government Act.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I've just noticed you're an hour and 22 over. A minute and 22 over, sorry.
It felt like an hour.
Councillor Dove.
Yes, thanks. I'd like to support the comments initially of Councillor Taylor and of the Deputy Mayor, who's clearly come back well rested and fired up from his 4 weeks away, and good on him. It was very great to hear you in such fine form, Martin. Look, the only comment I want to make in this, and I support the resolution, I don't think it hurts us at all to remind ourselves, just in the way that the governance manager talked about before, but I do want to make a point, and it's probably to Audit New Zealand, in relation to their comment that there may have been a blurring of the roles of governance and management, etc., etc. The nature of local government in New Zealand is that there should be a partnership between elected members and appointed officials. That's how we work best in local government, not by passing motions and then forgetting about it, but by passing resolutions at the proper place and proper time, and then being involved in ways where we can support staff to achieve the implementation of those motions. And it's very important that there actually is a blurring. And I say to Audit New Zealand that great that there may have been a blurring, and long may blurring live in this area. Because as someone who works in some other areas closely with staff, for instance the rail project, we're involved in that together because it needs political impetus and it needs staff work to achieve some outcomes. And I would like to see more of that, to be honest. And we obviously check that people in either direction hasn't gone too far. But I see that as a plus, not as a negative, because it's a partnership that we're after here, not two distinct arms that practically never have anything to do with each other. Thank you.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you very much. Look, I actually commend Angela for going through the process of challenging our processes. I think that's always appropriate. I don't think that the process, and I don't know if it was, I definitely don't think it was intended, but there was a degree of slandering which went on. I don't think that was at all necessary and was very, very clumsy. But I can't support the motion because, as I said, I think it's totally redundant. I think it simply says it's like having a 50 mile an hour or kilometre an hour speeding limit and saying on the books that you have to follow the speed limits. Of course you do. We have to follow our processes. We have to follow the law. So I don't think that the resolution, other than some virtue signalling, moves us forward at all and just creates complexity. So, yeah, that's where I stand.
Just to give members time to think and consider, I will take the motion separately. So I will take A as one vote and then B and C as a second vote. Okay, so just because the report does need to be received. So,
order or something. A point of something. I was going to move an amendment that the staff or the recommendation was followed, because if we voted that down, we couldn't receive the report. So where does that leave me? Do I need to do that now, or?
I've just covered that off when saying that we're going to vote separately. So
Right,
you'll be able
so
to
I don't
vote
need to do that.
for A to receive the report, and then you'll be able to vote for or against B and C if you choose.
In that case, I've got nothing to say. Thank you.
Order on the basis of respect under the Code of Conduct, not to Councillor Bunting, just to the comments that have been made in the chamber around comments that are indirectly pointed at some members in the chamber with the words virtue slander. In participating in this process, irrespective of the actual decision on the project, which is aside from this, I personally never once mentioned any member of the public's name. Mine was always about the process, always about the process. So I object to those kinds of words being thrown around and being part of public record. Thank you for allowing me time to explain that too. Well, he has to rule on mine first, Mark.
Sorry. So no, I'm not going to rule positively in favour of your point of order. I believe a lot of water's gone under the bridge over a long period of time, which the Speaker may have been referring to during this process. What's your point of order?
My point about qualified privileges, I wasn't referring to any individual, but I was reminding all members of this chamber we are subject to qualified privilege, but certainly an implication that I was accusing an individual is resented.
We don't need the explanation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the audit report says that there may have been a blurring of the lines between governance and management, and acknowledges this boundary is a difficult one to determine with precision. I believe my actions were absolutely appropriate as part of my role to develop the initial draft 10-year plan. As Mayor, I have a legislative responsibility to drive the 10-year plan, and I believe that an obligation to ensure as much information as possible is put in front of Council to make their decisions on the 10-year plan. I presented my vision for the Central City Park to the Council in September, and the Council resolved to seek further information, including later resolving to have design drawings prepared. All of this was well before the 10-year plan meeting in December. I have long had a vision for this area, and I've spoken about it many times, going back for at least 3 years. My vision was the basis of the proposal, which was being taken to the council in December. I believe it's completely appropriate for me as mayor to speak to an architect for 10 minutes several weeks before that to explain my vision and thoughts. The proposal and designs that then went to council in December as part of the mayor's budget. So that was after that event, which gave time for debate and proposal. I am supportive of the motion here because point 3 only strengthens my position as mayor to lead under the Local Government Act. And point B, clearly reinforces my position to lead with the reference to the Local Government Act 2002. I also personally apologise to the Chief Executive, Richard Briggs, and to the 2 property owners for the criticisms and the cloud that they came under during this process. And I commend Audit New Zealand for the report that cleared their good names. A right of reply, Councillor Angela? Okay, we'll go to the board to vote.
So you're voting first on...
So we're voting on A first to receive the report only.
On the board, Councillor Mallett.
Motion 1 is carried unanimously.
Okay, we'll now go to motion 2.
Sorry, apologies, I have...
Okay, could we reset the board, please?
Jet lag. Do you have a passport to operate that, Deputy Mayor?
Motion 2 is carried 6-4, 4 against.
Thank you very much for coming down in a foggy morning. So, well done. Thank you, David, for overseeing this process.
Thank you, Audit New Zealand. Before you go to a break...
hang on, we're not going to a break, but
no.
you go ahead.
Councillor O'Leary asked questions regarding 2 items in the agenda setting part of the meeting. Both those items are coming to the 16th of August meeting. The great work by the governance team, in particular Amy, identified they're on the agenda for the 16th of August meeting.
So how do we cover that off though? Because the resolution was specific, and Councillor Mallett goes on about this a lot, rightly so, date and committee, date and council. And yet we just arbitrarily change it.
I've answered half your question.
Excuse me, hang on, whoa.
That was already on.
Sorry, but there's supposed to be no comment about a paper once we're done. This can be done offline. Well, I don't know where this is going to end up, who knows, but it needs to be done offline. It doesn't need to be done there.
We still do the committees, it's not the council.
She's doing a good job shutting down.
I'm going to check next week because...
Okay, we'll now go, just for an update, the expected time of arrival for our speaker for the Māori representation is 11:15. So we'll be stopping for a cup of tea at about 11 and then back to line up with his arrival.
Can we make an attempt then to let the people know that time, that we're certainly the ones that gave presentations before? Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Okay, so now we'll go to item 5 on page 6. So I'll move, seconded by Deputy Mayor. All those for? Any against? It's minutes, Gary. Okay. So page 6.
Sorry, there's a couple. Is that the first bunch of minutes? Okay, so just want to be clear on the on page 12 of those minutes. That's the resolution to approve the Perry's PDA. The Perry's special housing accord thing. You know, the Te Awa Lakes. Did that? Was there no mention of mitigation for Fonterra and AFCO and things like that in that resolution? Okay. Just wanted clarity on that. Thank you.
Okay, all those for? Any against? Carried. Item 6, page 20. Confirmation of Council Open Minutes 28th of June 2018, moved by myself, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Councillor Gary? No. All those for? Any against? Carried. Okay, we'll now go to the Chair's report, which is item 7, page 58. Ah, yes, that's right. Sorry. We will not be going there. We'll be coming back to that. Did you have a visitor for this one? No. Item 11. The General Manager of that needs to get his team here if they want a voice. So we're on page 98. We've gone there now. So I want to welcome Evelisa Wright, who is the new General Manager of All Things Messy, and I think you'll all find Evelisa fantastic to work with. She's just, yeah. So we welcome you and congratulate you on your position of General Manager Infrastructure Operations. So, well done.
Thank you. So while I wait for my team to arrive, this is the refuse transfer station report. This is required to come to Council on an annual basis to approve the increase in the gate fees for the refuse transfer station and the Hamilton Organic Centre. So I'll take the report as read, and if you've got any questions.
Councillor Gary.
I'm happy to move.
Okay, moved by Councillor Gary, seconded by Councillor Mark. Councillor Dave.
Yes, thanks. I'm just wanting to get a bit of history for the schedule of charges, Evelisa, on page 100 there, and perhaps on page 101. This has been raised before. The charges that the increases that have happened year on year, we're not seeing. We're only seeing the last year's the increase over the 1 year, and there certainly are some of the increases seem to me to cumulatively to have been quite high, and I'm really not too worried about this particular one today, but I would like to see in future when this comes 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and what's the 1 year increase, because I just have a feeling that some of them are being ratcheted up higher than the rate of inflation or the cost increases to the operators.
Okay.
At a bit sort of death by 1,000 cuts there.
Yeah. Okay.
Page 202, it's actually there.
Page what?
202 of our report. Beg your pardon, page 104 of our report. There's a historical rate change there. It goes back to 2009. Anyway.
Yeah, that's
not quite long enough for you.
I know that. Well, that doesn't. It's not the dollar amounts. Yes,
No,
sorry.
That's the per tonne amount or the
years. Sorry.
And so, point noted. So
it's
that's something that we can
what it
bring
costs a
in
punter to take
the,
a bag or a trailer and sort of thing.
Yeah. So the actual cost. So then you can see the incremental cost increases.
And it might be easiest to do it in a graph like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Point noted.
And we can just keep using the same thing with a new year in it each time.
Mm-hmm.
So is there an answer to the question required?
Yes, that in future reports will include the dollar rates so that there is a historical rate shown so that you can see the history of the increases and in line with the inflation increases and other increases that have been over the years. So there's a comparison.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Martin.
In your report, and perhaps a note intervention Councillor Bunting as well, as part of the work we're doing around obviously one, moving to a new household collection, but also encouraging and developing, the recycling option, waste minimisation. One of the issues we've talked about is, the fly tipping, where some people will just chuck stuff down a gully because they have the character and personality of a vandal and they're not very nice people. Others maybe, have some challenges. There is, however, a factor of the fine line between, I can't afford to go to the tip, and it's discouraging me, so I'm going to hoard stuff out the back and then not deal with it. And so I guess the question is, what work have we done around New Zealand about the psychology, one of taking stuff to the refuge transfer, then very importantly, obviously encouraging as many people to go to the organic tip where they can, do green waste. What work has been done in that area around consumer resistance and then we chicken and egg situation?
I'm not aware of anything specifically around that and work that's been done sort of outside. I guess from our perspective, what we're looking at with the new service would be the whole education and communication package around, so making people aware of what's available.
Because in this society, you can be very low income, but you still have to roughly have a car, right? And then you borrow someone's trailer because you've got a whole lot of junk around your house, you're low income. But there's a point where the cost becomes an impediment because, the $47 is a doctor, there's a whole lot of calls, legitimate calls on that amount of money. Now, whether we can, in the new system like we have in other societies, we've talked about, an inorganic day collection, working with like the LDS and marvellous church groups who do some of this stuff. Do you see what I'm trying to drive at here?
Yes, definitely.
Is there a sort of work in progress that we can be looking at? How can we actually do some work to assist or to encourage street side, inorganic collections on a...
I think that will sort of come with, as we work through of the waste management and minimisation plan, and just some of the community engagement aspects.
Sure. So can I ask for future reports for some paragraph? You see where I'm trying to come from, is that you address that whole issue of assisting, being aware where costs start to become a barrier to low income, and then what are the other options that we follow in New Zealand, and what are our potential options to encourage people to sort of put out waste legitimately as against, the fly tip or hoarding.
Councillor Ryan.
I take Councillor Dave's point, but also I actually found the report quite succinct and helpful, so thank you. Just regarding the operational costs that you talk about forcing the prices up, there was a price increase last year because of the rising fuel costs, etc. Is there any ability of the waste care management to sort of fix the price for 2 or 3 years in terms of providing some certainty, or are we going to potentially see this ratcheting go up every year?
Yeah, it's probably obviously within, we don't, they have their business model in terms of how they're working through in terms of their costs that they need to cover and making it sort of tick over and making sure that it's a viable business for them. So I guess at this stage it will, if they, they're still in a position to actually increase it on a yearly basis. I guess what we're looking towards the future with a new service in place with a new contract is just have a little bit more strength around council, around what we can and can't do that, and a little bit more transparency from them in terms of how real these costs are.
Yeah, because I appreciate fuel costs are beyond their control, but we're never going to see it ratcheted back down as fuel prices drop. That's the sort of the counter of it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Councillor Leo.
Yeah, question here. I noticed on page 99, paragraph 13, which states that Waste Management shall give 10 weeks' notice of their intended increase. I noticed that on the 5th of July is when Waste Management actually contacted the landlord, which is us, and yet in the staff recommendation, these fees are going to implement from the 3rd of August, which is tomorrow, which only gives 4 weeks' notice. I think we've been ripped off by 6 weeks by Waste Management. That's the way I read it.
Sorry. I'll have to go. So we had, I may have that date incorrect in terms of the 5th of July. So we were trying to work in within the time frame that they were notified to us, then that 10-week period. So sorry, I'll have to confirm that. I may have that date incorrect.
Because I won't be paying until my 10 weeks are up.
Could we be advised of the...
Yep.
Sorry, paragraph 18 actually says the 24th of May, you're informed. So that might be the right date, is that right?
So there may be a date mix-up, so we'll get that clarified.
So let's clarify before we pass the resolution.
Yes.
The 28th of May was the Hamilton Organic Centre, so they notified at different times, but I will need to confirm the transfer station.
Okay, we'll stop for a cup of tea until 11:10. That'll give you time just to clarify that question. There are no more questions, unless... Was that your last question? Yeah, so we'll just clarify that, and we'll come back into this item for debate once you come back with that information.
Yep.
So we'll break until 11:10.
Great, thank you.
Okay, we'll get started again. So Trent, could you please answer Councillor Leo's concern?
Yes. And I can confirm that that date was the date that they notified us of the increase.
Right there.
So probably just to clarify.
Gary, we need you at the table to get a quorum.
You got Gary?
We still need one more, don't we?
Sorry?
We need one more, don't we? Councillor Paula. Excuse me, Councillor Paula. Councillor Paula. We need you to sit down to make a quorum. Thank you. Okay, Trent, we've got a quorum.
Okay. Yeah. Firstly, apologies for the confusion. So just to confirm that that date of the 5th of July was the correct date of notification from Waste Management around the change in fees. So in terms of the 10-week working period, to, I guess, just slight clarification, it's around the time for us to form the report and have the ability to take the report to council for notification around the fee increase. So
Until mid-September.
At the moment, obviously, we've indicated to them 3rd of August, but we are able to go back to them and...
well, they'll be as aware of the 10 weeks as we are.
Yeah. And part of it was trying to line it up with the Hamilton Organic Centre fee increases, because that was actually an 8-week period, and we've fallen outside of that 8-week period because they notified us back on the 18th of May.
Okay, so the motion's been moved and seconded. Is there anyone who'd like to speak to the motion? So, Councillor Leo.
This motion because under the agreement, of course, there is a 10-week period, and yet the recommendation, of course, is the 3rd of August, which is tomorrow. And I believe we'll have to push it out to 10 weeks as from the 5th of July before this would become a legal proposition.
So could we just ask for the Chief Executive whether we need to move a amendment to that effect, or just how we're going to handle this situation?
So my understanding, it will be at our discretion when that date is affected by. So we have the choice. So if we choose to choose to go earlier than the 10 weeks, that's our choice, and it doesn't in any way, shape or form challenge the rest of the integrity of the contract. No.
So just...
I'll just say it's your choice. You can either wait till the 10 weeks have expired and have the price changes affected by then, or you can choose to do it as per the recommendation in the report. The impact, of course, is that the benefit, if you leave it later, the punter will have the benefit of lower prices for a little bit longer, but the supplier will have to absorb those additional costs for a period longer as well. So there's pros and cons in both respects.
Excuse me, is it appropriate to move an amendment to that? Or was it left open?
Councillors can choose, if they wish, to put an amendment forward to comply with the requirements of the contract, if they choose to. If that's their intent, then that's what should be put forward.
Councillor?
An amendment. Yep. And I understand that the 10-week period will be the 13th of September 2018. And that way we would not be in breach of the lease which we have between Waste Management and the Council.
Does that leave us safe legally and financially?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll, with the leave of who seconded my motion? Gary, are you comfortable to withdraw the motion?
Only in respect of there is another party, of course, and I assume they are expecting to put their prices up tomorrow if this goes through, and they will. Are we breaching any sort of resolute or just?
I'm not fully familiar with the contract. My understanding was the contract requires a 10-week notice period for increases. Is there any obligation on us in terms of our response time when they've notified us? And have we met those? Will we meet those response times if we notify them tomorrow?
Yes, we will, because obviously we've had discussions as going through, and just said obviously we're trying to get it through this council today for a decision for them. So I think they're understandable.
Point of order: the actual staff report quotes deed of lease, which has 10 weeks, and that's something signed by both parties.
No, I'm not challenging that. I was making sure they worded further provisions, Councillor Dave. Hey, also, the challenge is, just as an aside, has the supplier updated their price, their board driving into the transfer station already, have they? In preparation for tomorrow?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Just in terms of the Hamilton Organic Centre, we are bound to provide a decision today, because that's an 8-week period, which we negotiated out longer because they notified on the 18th of May.
So we'll just ensure that the amendment will show that. So what I just want to check is there any liability on any party for the loss here, of us stipulating that we stick with the contract of giving 10 weeks notice?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. Yep, so Councillor Gary, are you comfortable to withdraw the motion?
Okay, so long as we're not breaching any agreements we've made with our customer, or what do we call it, our tenant.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so it was moved by Councillor Leo and it's seconded by Councillor Mark, which is now, the amendment has now become the motion. Okay, Chief Executive or Democracy Manager, you happy the words cover the organic station and covers everything off? Okay, so we're now moving to debate. Councillor Leo.
It's under B up there, is that 13 September as well, is it? Because I don't think that will be necessary.
No, that's the C, that's 3rd of August.
So B could stay as the 3rd of August, because that's for the HCC.
Other way around.
Right, sorry. Yeah. No, you're right. Sorry. Yeah. No, I believe what we have to do, of course, is we have to stick with the terms of the lease which we have with Waste Management, which clearly says that it's got to be 10 weeks notification to council of the increase in fees. And by them notifying us on the 5th of July and then increasing the fees on the 3rd of August, that's only a 4-week period. So we have to extend that out to the 10-week period for legality as far as the lease is concerned. That's all.
Richard. So sorry, Councillor Leo, were you debating or were you asking a question?
I thought he was debating.
You're in debate?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I was confused too.
All right. Okay. So Leo, Councillor Leo, sorry. Do you want to start your debate again, or are you comfortable with where you are? Okay, thank you. Councillor Mark.
Thank you. Yes, I support the Leo's motion, obviously, and I want to thank the staff for managing this, bearing in mind we're coming to a tail end of our very long contract that we've had, and if I can offer some reassurance to councillors that the intent of the next system is that if there are going to be price rises, etc., they come to us for approval rather than just as a matter of course. So, again, great work to the staff who have been through a very long period of negotiation with our potential new contractors, and yeah, so this sort of thing won't happen in the future, we're hoping.
Councillor Dave.
Briefly, the purpose of the contract has been talked about here as being, as a protecting council, as a protecting the contractors. It's actually, in my mind, the bigger purpose is protecting the ratepayers and the residents who use the facility, because we've certainly copped some flack in the past by having no choice but to accept price increases. It's always been a Clayton's discussion here that we have no choice. Once they're put to us, we have to accept them pretty much. And we've, in fact, never turned them down in the sort of 18 years or so that I've been around with this contract's been going. The other point is we need to, and we will, as Councillor Mark said, in the new regime from 2020 onwards, be able to get the organic recycling centre and the refuse transfer station in line, get those contracts in line. They should be happening together, and we should have a lot more control over what the price movements are and the price difference between those two. It's been really messy for a long time, and this is just another example of the messiness, and I'm glad that staff have been able to fix that up. I think it'll make their life a bit easier in the long run as well.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. I just want to make a couple of comments, support this. I think it's pertinent for us to be reminded that the cost of waste disposal is only going one way at the moment in New Zealand, and that the national waste levies are likely to go up quite considerably. So getting rid of waste is not going to become cheaper, it's going to become more costly for the community. But this is just one aspect. This is the disposal, and we've got to focus therefore on the recycling, the reuse and the reduction of waste with some focus, because otherwise we're all going to bear heavy costs going forward. So I want to congratulate the staff on this. I am just also raising a flag of caution that there'll always be a tipping point in price. Oh yeah. And I was going to say, thank you. And I was going to say, and that's my concern is about at what point does taking a load of rubbish to the dump become prohibitive to some people, so that they begin fly tipping behaviour, dumping it into, because the Department of Conservation in the Waikato is really concerned about the amount of waste that they're having to remove from conservation parks, and that is an issue. And of course we know, because we also pick it up from the boundaries of Hamilton City on the shoulders of the road quite often. So we do need to be mindful that we have sufficient resource in-house to enforce our waste bylaws and infringe, fine people who are caught illegally disposing rubbish, because that's not acceptable. And that takes some resource as well. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, we'll go to the board to vote.
The motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you, Trent. Thank you, Evelisa. Okay, we're now moving to Māori Representation Review Proposal, which is item 20, and it's under a separate cover, so it's not in the book with the other items today. So we'll bring Leanne to the table and her team. So while they're getting organised, this item is item 20, the Māori Representation Review, which is under a separate cover. You will recall in October last year that we made a decision not to pursue Maori wards, and we asked staff to explore alternative options for Māori representation. This is a final report from the project team for us to consider. Judging from the public forum, and is Margaret Evans still here? No, past Mayor Margaret Evans was here earlier, but there's obviously a lot of interest in this item, and I acknowledge you all today who are here to listen and be a part of this what we're about to discuss. So, Democracy Manager Leanne, who is not doing this, who's has put this report together, I'll just ask you to, I'll hand over to you now, and you can introduce your team, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. Kia ora tātou. So this morning, my name's Leanne Jordan. I'm the Governance Manager and the leader of the project that's looked at the alternative arrangements for Māori representation. With me this morning in presenting this report are, of course, Tamaipo Kaua, Council's Kaumātua, and Muna Wharawhara, who is Council's Amorangi Māori. They have both been instrumental in facilitating hui in collaboration with our Māori stakeholders, and I acknowledge those of our stakeholder group that are in the audience today, together with our other visitors. To my left is Paul Beverley. I'd like to introduce Paul. He is a partner with Buddle Finley in Wellington. Buddle Finley and actually heads their Māori law team, which acts for over 20 local authorities on Māori-related issues. He has advised the Crown on over 50 Treaty of Waitangi settlements, including being part of the core negotiation team working with Waikato River iwi, including the drafting of the co-governance arrangements and the JMA template. Paul has worked extensively with a number of councils in structuring committees and other arrangements agreed between local authorities and Māori to meet authorities' legislative obligations, and he is recognised nationally as an expert on Māori-related issues in the local government sector. So welcome, Paul.
Thank you.
This is actually the first time I've met Paul in person, so rather than over the phone, so it's lovely to have you here. Mayor Andrew and councillors, you have the report in front of you. We're here to answer any questions you may have. I suggest we take the report as read.
Sure.
Sorry, and I should have raised this earlier. It's just regarding the debate time on this. I think this is such a big one. I would wonder if we could extend it out to the full 5 minutes. Governance Manager? Or whoever's...
Look, that needed to be raised at the beginning when that came up, but I will exercise some discretion.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep, happy with that.
All right.
Thanks.
So, Paul, thank you for coming, and I know it's been a struggle getting here. Where did you land in the end?
Tēnā koe, Your Worship. Landed in Auckland and managed to not be quite so much fog up there.
Okay, I've heard of Auckland. Paul, I'm going to direct some questions at you to start. So I'll just ask you firstly to give us some context around this, and particularly in terms of what other local authorities are doing in this area.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. And good morning, councillors, and tēnā koutou to all of mana whenua who are here. Just briefly, the approach to the relationships between local government and tangata whenua vary quite a lot around the country. Every council that I'm involved with are on a journey of identifying the appropriate model for a partnership in their regional district. But there's been a lot of progress over the last 5 or 10 years, and there are a number of different models in place. There are a number of models that are very similar to the model that's before the council today. There are a number of co-governance and co-management models in place, and again, this council has those co-governance relationships with Waikato Tainui as a result of that settlement. And there are a whole range of other models. So I always say, and I think this report that's before the council is a product of a really excellent piece of work that's been done in terms of working with the council's iwi partners and finding a model that may work here. I think the key starting point is that, well, there's 2 key points. One is that, as I read the material, this council has an aspiration to have strong relationships with its Māori partners. And secondly, the Local Government Act itself requires that local authorities provide an opportunity to for Māori to contribute to the decision-making processes of council. It's a relatively strong obligation, and most often is focused on some input into the committee level or some level of governance of the council. So I've worked with Leanne and the team on this proposal. In particular, I've drafted the agreement. I think the council team and the iwi actually came up with the key values and principles, and I think they're very good. But I'm very confident that this is a model that is highly workable. I think one of the things that has really struck me about this piece of work that's been done is the way that the council and its partners have come together and agreed a model, and that level of consensus is not always there, and I think it's a real feature of this work. So but I think what councillors can have confidence in is that the law the legislation actually requires the council to provide that opportunity for Māori to participate in those decision-making processes. So, in my view, council's on a solid legal footing in doing this. So that's just some introductory comments, if they're helpful, Your Worship.
So, what are your thoughts on advisory roles versus voting members on committee? You know, members having voting rights on committees.
So there's a spectrum of, as Your Worship's aware, there's a spectrum of potential input. And I was involved in a piece of work in New Zealand last year where we went across and looked at a whole lot of examples across the country, with advisory more at one end and say joint decision making at the other. So if I just give an example, the Wellington Regional Council's Te Puketaio Committee, which has been in place for I think since 2007, which is half mana whenua, half council, and full decision-making functions over the regional plan. That works in that council and in that context. But I believe that generally in local government, we're moving beyond the advisory model. The advisory model is good, but there's in most places now there's more of a focus on some input into the actual decision-making, so some voting roles. So I think that's the direction we're heading in, really, as a country.
And are you confident that this piece of work, are you confident this is robust and in managing our relationship with Māori going forward?
Yes, Your Worship, I actually think it's a really excellent piece of work, and I think, again, what really struck me was the collaborative way within which the work has been done with iwi and Matawaka, and I think that degree of consensus around the model is actually an extremely positive thing, and I don't always see that. So sorry, to answer your question, it is robust, yes.
Okay, Councillor Gary.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Paul is? Yes, that's right.
Okay, thank you. Who will the Maori representatives be accountable to?
Through you, sir. You may want to answer this as well. So there's really a couple of answers to that. First and foremost, the iwi or Matawaka group who appoints that, who nominates that member will have a level of responsibility through this overarching kawanata or agreement that we've got attached to this paper. So that's where that but ultimately they will be a member of a council committee and will be subject to all of the same, the code of conduct, the standing orders, and all of those other matters that the other members are.
So who decides who gets on and when it's their time to come off?
So the model, as proposed, is that the iwi and the Matawaka group nominate members. There are quite detailed criteria in the agreement which have to be satisfied for that person to be nominated. It's a council's decision whether to appoint that member to the committee, and the council retains... Sorry,
just say that again. So a nominee from a tribal group or something gets put forward, and then council decides if we're going to accept the person.
The council decides on whether that person will be appointed. The council retains the discretion to discharge a member from the committee and can...
Under what grounds?
Well,
has relatively free
So it's
discretion.
at pleasure, at the pleasure of the council.
Yes, Councillor. What we've done in the agreement, of course, is there are a number of values and principles in this agreement which guide the way the relationship will work. So a decision to discharge a member, for example, would be a reasonably significant decision. And what the agreement says is that would have to be made in a manner that's consistent with the values and principles that the parties have agreed. So there would presumably be a process you'd work through before you'd jump to that. But ultimately, the council retains that authority and discretion as it currently has.
Okay.
And if I could just add to that, Councillor Mallett, the documentation also includes, in addition to criteria for the appointment of for the requirements of a suitable candidate, a role description, if you like, that sets out the expectations in terms of the person's contribution and participation and responsibilities as a member of a committee.
Okay. So this is quite different then than the process we go through. Very, very different. We go through a process of exposure to the public. We're questioned, we're challenged, we have to respond to answers from or questions from all sorts of people. Will there be any process like this for the Maori representatives?
No.
So that whole part of democracy is avoided, is it?
So I think, to be clear here, we're not talking about appointing elected representatives. We're not talking about appointing elected members. We are talking about appointing individuals, committees of council. These people will not be elected members. They do not have the rights and responsibilities of elected members, and they are not able to participate or be part of council. Under the LGA, council has the lawful right to appoint to the committees. Excuse me. And in terms of the selection process, it's our view, based on honouring partnership obligations and responsibilities under the treaty and the LGA, that we should enable our Māori partners to determine the people they best fit the criteria that we have set for membership of this committee.
Has any consideration or analysis been given to the concern or frustration of every other ratepayer or citizen of Hamilton who sees this as a move towards favouritism based on race? Was that part of your analysis?
Part of our analysis has very clearly canvassed our legal and lawful responsibilities. It's also canvassed principles of good governance. We are mindful as a project team and an extended group that this is a topic which attracts considerable public interest and support, obviously some not. We're also very conscious as staff that any matter that's potentially contentious that we bring to council, there will be people that agree and people that disagree. And as a governance body, ultimately, you make decisions every other day on a range of topics for which there is a diverse public view. We'd argue that this is no different.
On page 6 of the report, paragraphs 24 and 25, you talk about staff have considered significance, engagement, blah, blah, blah. This is a proposal to appoint people based on race to a position within our committees. How on earth could that be considered of low significance? How on earth did you reach that decision?
We've reached the decision following the council-approved criteria for significance engagement policy. But I think the point to be made in support of our approach here, or to clarify our approach, Councillor Mallett, is that we do not believe, and we utterly refute, that we're making decision based on race-based politics. We are, and have continued to work throughout this process to find the way in which council can lawfully honour its obligations under the LGA to partnership with Māori, and that's what we believe we have done in putting this recommendation in front of you.
On page 8, paragraph 30, you contend that Maori individuals will bring a long-term focus on the city's future. Why would they bring any greater long-term focus on the city than any other citizen of any other race?
Tame, would you like to respond to that question?
Māori have, yesterday I was out at Taupiri with the new Waikato Regional Economic Development Agency, and in there they learnt a little bit about New Zealand, no other country, and we already had an economic base, and I explained it, with our mills, our flour mills, the production
Sorry,
coming off our
Tom,
ground.
when you're saying our, you're saying
We're talking
Maori a
about the
long time
tribal.
ago.
Yes, I'm talking about tribal. So the tribe, these people you see sitting here, they had an economic base. It was destroyed in 1863 by the Crown. In 1995, Queen Elizabeth came to New Zealand. If you Google that, you'll see her signing the Royal Assent. What that means is we apologise for what we did to you, not only as a race, the economic development we crushed. We have rebuilt from 1995 to what is now an economy in the Waikato region, and that is not going to be stopped. That's going to continue with the base and with the new inland port for the benefit of Hamilton, all Hamiltonians.
Sorry, Tommy, you're not addressing my question. My question is, why would Maori individuals have a better long-term focus than any other individual in terms of any other race?
The reason why Māori don't have a 3-year term. We've been here since 1350. We're going to be here till you go back into Papatūānuku.
You suggest that we won't be here much longer. Why do you suggest, or people who are non-Maori won't be here much longer? Why do you say that?
In politics, our politics have started when we landed. We don't have politics for a 3-year term, all right? So politics in the Māori world, when we touched down and named all the places, that's when our politics started, in the naming. Now, when we move forward in the future, there's no different. The only difference is we move with technology. So we're going to be here. And we work with other races. You've got to remember, the team that went into negotiation had different members from around the world working in the team.
Sorry, what negotiation are you talking about?
When the Raupatu settlement team negotiated, we had other members, not only Māori, on that team. So when we work with business, we work with not only Māori, but all the community.
Okay. On page 8, paragraph 38, there's a statement there that what is good for Maori is good for all the peoples of Hamilton. Sorry, paragraph 39, beg your pardon. Surely then isn't what's good for all the people of Hamilton good for Maori? And surely Maori are part of all the people of Hamilton. So why are we picking them out? What evidence, and what evidence have you got that supports that proposition?
So,
and it needs, I mean, it's not just wishful thinking I'm wanting, I want real hard evidence, which has been absolutely missing from this entire report, which has been lauded by everyone else.
Point of order, Chair. The final comment by Councillor Mallett has nothing to do with the question, it's to do with a personal viewpoint which can be expressed in debate, surely, not as part of a question. It's a gratuitous insult.
So, answer to the question, which was, what is good for Māori is good for everybody.
What was your point of order?
Excuse me, Gary.
Oh, sorry.
Debates, so your ideas coming through in questions is not acceptable. You hold those for debate. Okay. So, but the question has been asked, so can we give the panel a chance to answer the question?
So just to be clear, my question was, what evidence supports your proposition that what is good for Maori is good for all the people of Hamilton? And if that is correct, then surely what is good for all the people of Hamilton is good for Maori.
One of the examples of
which is straight out of your report.
Yep, out of the staff report.
Yep.
That's right, Gary. So one of the clear examples is attended the stakeholder event provided by Waikato Tainui the other night, and they talked about generational benefits to Hamilton City Council. So that statement wasn't based on race. They saw that as being beneficial to the region and also to the city. So they saw the generational benefits of Ruakura for everyone, not just Māori. So what was good for Māori was good for everyone. So if Māori were leading that development, then the benefits were widespread to everyone. The second point I'd like to make is that, as an example, to demonstrate that, I guess, is if you look at the structure of TGH, Māori are not, TGH or Waikato Tainui are not adverse to employing non-Māori to lead their developments, because they know they need that expertise in achieving great results. So those appointments, the likes of the Sir Henry van der Hayden, Chris Joblin and the likes, you know, they were there to advance the aspirations of Waikato Tainui to be successful, and transferring that success to the region and also to Hamilton City. So those are probably two clear examples I could give to you, Councillor Mallet, around.
Okay, why do you think it's appropriate to compare a commercial organisation, somewhat privately owned, clearly owned by a group of people, to a political organisation, which has governance and regulatory responsibility over a whole bunch of people? So those is that an equivalent comparison?
So in terms of TGH, they are people focused, and that's the direction from the tribe. Similar to council, people focus, people come first, and that's why there are similarities between the tribe and council.
Okay. There's nothing in this report, and I've sort of alluded to it previously, and I want to know if you have considered it or analysed it. What is the risk that favouring Maori will create resentment and anger amongst other groups, not given the same favouritism? Have you thought that through? Have you, you know, are we going to end up like Czechoslovakia? Yugoslavia, beg your pardon?
No. So that's been asked and answered. In my view,
And
could
you just, Councillor Gary,
just remind me what the answer was?
Can I just remind you, this isn't about favouritism, this is about fulfilling our obligation.
It is about, it's...
No, Gary, that's an opinion. This is about fulfilling our obligation under the Local Government Act. Okay, so if you want to interpret as favouritism, that's your opinion, save that for debate.
Okay. All right, that's me done. Oh, just page 4, paragraph C, Romans 1. Can you explain the, I'm not sure, are they per the costs or the remuneration, are they per appointee, or are they for Finance 1, Infrastructure 1 and Social Environmental 2? So that's 4 people. Is that paying 4 people, is it?
That represents the total amount, and if you look at point 55 on page 14 of the report, it sets out...
Sorry, which page was it?
Page 14. The coloured table there.
Okay, so that is the total figures.
It is.
Thank you.
Councillor Dave.
Thank you. Maybe this is a question to Leanne to start with. Would you regard the process of appointment as being somewhat similar to the appointment of 2 accountants to the Audit and Risk Committee?
Absolutely. I believe the Council's previous and current processes for appointing to Audit and Risk and the RMA set a scene and context for this appointment process.
And those appointees didn't stand for election, did they?
No, they did not.
Were there any complaints from the public or interest groups about the non-elected members of a official council committee?
No, they were not. No, they were not. And I might also add no commentary from elected members either. Okay.
And were there any petitions raised in public in relation to that matter?
No, there were not.
Why do you think there's a different response this time compared with then? Just your professional opinion.
My professional opinion, having spent the better part of 14 months on this process, is that there is a fundamental understanding amongst some areas about what council's legislative obligations for partnership mean and what they can look like in practice. I think at a high conceptual level there's an understanding that we do have those obligations, but it becomes a little bit more complicated once we try and work out how to give effect to those obligations.
So it's the
practice.
implementation that's causing the contention, not the basic sort of requirement itself.
Yes.
Yeah. The process that Māori, both the iwi and Mata Waka will go through in selecting nominees to council, how open will that be? Will, for instance, will Chris Joblin be able to say, put in a nomination to Tainui, say, I would like to be considered as one of the members, or Joe Rewiti from down the road be able to put a nomination forward? I mean that seriously, because it's been a question raised, you know, how can people be considered for those positions?
Representatives from Runanga, I think, I don't know if Andrew's still here. In Hui, when we discussed this, we as a council staff were very clear that this appointment process should be by Māori for Māori. So for that specific reason, we haven't prescribed. What we have done, as you will see from the documentation, is set out a very clear list of essential criteria. We have complete assurance from our Māori stakeholders that they have, and they do, appoint people to all manner of governance and management boards as part of their normal day-to-day conduct of business. So we are confident that they have the processes in place to bring forward quality nominations to council. But I don't know if anybody wants to comment further.
Would that potentially, the details of that potentially form part of the further discussions that the Chief Executive's empowered to deal with?
Absolutely correct, and I should also add that we have very clear expectations around conflict of interest, so there would be some people by virtue of the positions they hold in organisations that would not be suitable candidates solely for the reason that they may hold particular offices in other organisations.
Right, thanks. Now, I'm interested in the difference between mana whenua and mata waka. We've only got one proposed mata waka representative on the Community Services Committee. I chair the Growth and Infrastructure Committee and can see lots of Article 3 related issues that come up through that committee as well. Wondering why there isn't a mata waka representative suggested also in addition for the Growth and Infrastructure, and perhaps even the Finance Committee, though it's not mine to comment on, so to speak.
The positions that have been put forward at the suggestion and with the agreement of our Māori stakeholders. You will have heard people speak in public forum this morning to indicate that they have long-term aspirations in terms of Māori wards, and I think they are very keen to continue to contribute in whatever way in the future around in terms of local decision making. They would be, I'm sure, very open to the idea of a mata waka position potentially on the GNI, but at this stage we've taken the approach of starting in a way that we know that will be sustainable and that will get us get the process started and get the appointments made. Right. That's essentially what's driven that.
So it's quite possible, technically, legally, that we could bring that up on as an addition to this that doesn't upend any or restart any process.
That's correct.
Yeah. And probably the last question maybe to Paul, possibly, given your experience, Paul, around all the different areas with the different flavours of models that you've had. In any one of those cases, has the sun failed to come up the next day after new processes have been put in place and Māori been put on committees, for instance?
No, that's a good question, Councillor. There's been a bit of fog from time to time, I must say. But no, look, the models of, I guess if I could be reasonably direct about my experience, is that I do understand the concerns that are expressed around these types of approaches, because they are new for people at times, and I've seen that in lots of examples. Probably the most visible example was the volcanic cones in Auckland, and I acted for Auckland Council on that. There was a lot of concern in the community around that at the time, but that's become the most council committee and one of the most successful co-governance models there are. And because
can you remind us what the nature of the co-governance is?
That's a very that's a much stronger one. Again, I said there was a spectrum on that. That's a model where 14 volcanic cones in Auckland, Tupuna Maunga, Ancestral Mountains, co-governed 6 Auckland Council members, 6 mana whenua members, and they together make all of the decisions over those areas. There's no going back to it's not a committee structure, it's the decision-making structure. So it's a much stronger model than the one being proposed here. It's an exceptionally successful model. In fact, as I understand it, Mayor Goff, it was oversubscribed at the last election, and he had a bit of trouble whittling down his own members. He had to ask a few favours for people to step back, because it was just an example of when it was proposed, there was some nervousness, but when people have seen it in action, this partnership, a successful partnership, is good for all. And if the other thing I've really observed is local authorities really seeing the benefits of this partnership and the long-term kind of, and this relates to a previous question, but the long-term investment model that Māori bring, because Māori have been here for all time and they'll be here for all time. They tend to invest locally, and certainly the councils I'm working with find that partnership to be a very good partnership, environmentally, socially, culturally and economically. So that would be my experience around the country, sir. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Just 3 quick questions. In respect to some of the things that were brought in the public forum in particular, I noticed in the recommendation, Leanne, that it says it refers to iwi and mātāwaka. And in on pages 10, where it talks about 10-11, where it talks about meaningful engagement with Māori, it just uses the word not iwi. Would it be material if the words in the recommendation were, for option 2, Māori rather than iwi representative? Given that the parties are going to work collaboratively together for the same result, which is to get representation on there, but we have heard some concern or confusion about the language and what it might mean.
It would be material. The arrangement that we have reached recognises Māori representation and acknowledges, in particular, it acknowledges iwi, mana whenua and mātāwaka. Mana whenua and iwi are happy that their perspectives are represented through the appointment process and under the banner of Waikato Tainui, and also mātāwaka are represented. So there's some nuancing around this that which is probably quite difficult to explain in this forum. So I would just really like to reiterate that this is unanimously supported by our Māori stakeholders.
Yeah, so that was going to be my next question. So mātāwaka, iwi, iwi, tainui iwi, hapu, and hapu that sit underneath that have all been consulted on in this, and therefore can I confidently assume that they are comfortable with the wording as it is in the recommendation? I wasn't sure that changing it back to Māori would diminish that, but you're suggesting it potentially could?
I'm suggesting what appears to be a one-word change in a recommendation in terms of how we've structured the documentation and the understanding of expectations sitting around that. It's not as simple as it sounds. And I think it is semantics. I think to an extent we are very clear as a combined group that we're talking about Māori representation, and at the same time we're specifically acknowledging iwi mana whenua and Mata Waka in that process. But Tame, do you have a comment to make on the fact, in terms of consultation with our Māori stakeholders?
I am very happy with the consultation we did with our Māori stakeholders from local hapu, local iwi, Mata Waka participation. I'm happy with that, and to move forward as a city. We've done that. We've spent over 12 months doing that, so I'm happy with that part. Careful with that word, the use of the word Māori. If you just say Māori, for example, and we're naming a street down in Ngāti Wairere, if you just say Māori, that means that could be someone from Christchurch coming down here to name a street in Wairere Drive who doesn't know the background to that land. There's little differences in there.
So that's where the nuance is.
That's where those nuances come in. Don't just say Māori and he comes down there and you named it wrong because Ngāti Haua said, no, that's not the history. That is this. It is Wairere Drive. It's not called Ngāi Tahu Drive. Thank you.
Okay, one further question. Just following on the conversation around the process, I read the kawanata. It was fairly in depth. The only thing that when I finished reading it, I wasn't entirely sure of, and I've had quite a lot of experience, as Paul knows, around many of these other models that you refer to. I wasn't quite sure what the process for appointment was. I see the principles underpinning the process, but and then Leanne, I think I heard you say something about you deliberately didn't pin down a process because...
Because we believe that that is the right and responsibility of those organisations putting forward candidates to do so in the manner that they believe best. So the process is in respect of council is that council makes the final appointment. And I firmly believe that's where council's responsibility in that regard begins. Other than setting out the criteria.
And if I may just add to that, Councillor Southgate, yes, I think it's quite common for, there are a number of examples of where, and the Tupuna Maunga Authority in Auckland's another one where there are actually 13 iwi grouping that appoint 6 members. That process for appointment is a matter of tikanga for those mana whenua to work through. It's the same in the Taranaki Regional Council. There's 8 members come down to 2 appointments, and they work through a process of tikanga and bring those appointments forward. But as Leanne, the essential criteria for the candidates is quite a good po or guide to what types of attributes those candidates have to have.
So we could essentially, or we potentially will see some of the Māori that have been put through the making good decisions course as commissioners and so on be considered in the mix. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Mark.
Thank you. I've got 2 areas I just want to probe into a wee bit. First is probably written here. I just haven't been able to find it. Why are we suggesting 1 representative on finance and on growth infrastructure, but 2 on community and services?
So there were a number of considerations that we took into account, and Muna may want to provide further clarification following my comments. One was our Māori stakeholders identified the areas in which they felt they had the greatest contribution to make. So Mata Waka, the Runanga, believe that the area that they work and have the greatest expertise at the moment in terms of engagement with the city is in the area of community and services, and hence their interest in that committee. So it wasn't a case of deliberately giving this number of seats to these committees and one over here. That was, again, as much their wish and aspiration as it was council, the staff agreeing that looked like a good model. Is there anything you want to add, Mona?
Yeah, I guess there were other formulas that were considered, like possibly having 3 members to each of the committees, but I think for our partners in the whole engagement process, they viewed this as being a nice, safe approach, and also in consideration potential costs. If we had 12 new appointments to the committees, that meant a whole lot more seats and a bigger cost to actually redesigning council chambers. So all those things were taken into consideration, and you know, they just thought this was a nice way to actually step to decision making for Māori.
And I guess if I could add one further comment, it would be that the unity you see and has been expressed in previous meetings and here today by our Māori stakeholders extends to the fact that they believe that they can represent each other's interests. Representation on committee too. Okay. So it is to that extent, and this is where the nuancing comes in, we are talking about Māori at the same time that we are talking about iwi mana whenua and Mātāwaka representation.
Great. Well, you've just delivered me a beautiful segue into my next question. Thank you. About unity and public consultation, which is my big fear at the moment. What mechanisms are there? Because initially, and I'll put it out there, I'm nervous about this because it seems to be going through without public consultation, which could blow up, or if we handle it right, it could go well. What mechanisms are there available to us, motion, to get some more public consultation or some more public buy-in?
We haven't recommended and are not recommending public consultation for the reasons I think I've canvassed earlier. One is that we're lawfully able to make, council is lawfully able to make a decision. We do not consult and have never consulted on the appointment of appointees to other committees of council, and I believe that council potentially sets a dangerous precedent in suggesting that you would consult publicly on the appointment of appointees to committees of council. I guess also at the end of the day, my earlier point that at any given point of time, this council makes decisions that are potentially contentious and does not always choose to consult publicly on those either. The significance engagement policy is quite clear in terms of the factors that we had to work through to derive a level of significance that there is no need to engage. Ultimately, whether you consult publicly or not is a decision of council, irrespective of our recommendation. But I want to be, I guess, quite clear that that this is a safe process in terms of council's legislative obligations. It's a safe, it's lawfully safe decision to make.
I get that, and I get the subjectivity of significance. Thank you. And I know it's legally safe. I feel comfortable in that. Thank you. But if we wanted as a group to bring the community more into the tent, what are our options? Could we invite public consultation, regardless of what we think the outcome may be?
Oh, that's a question for council. On the 16th of August, I'll be sitting here again talking to you about the wider representation review, where again you will see through pre-consultation and in anticipation of public consultation, weighty governance matters for which you will have a range of public opinion. And as elected members, you will need to make decisions about governance matters guided by, I guess, diversity, and it is a diversity of view that exists in the public. The matter of consultation is yours and yours alone to determine. There's no precedent for it in terms of this process is what we're saying to you.
Yeah, so that is one thing that did confuse me. We've got this coming up next time. Why is it just because it's different legislation that this is in a different, we're dealing with this in a different space? So it would have been actually quite cool to put it all together.
You did consider this as part of the wider representation review, and you chose as a council not to support Māori wards and to instead explore the powers currently available to council to explore Māori representation. So what we have done, and I want to be really clear about this as a project team, is we have acted to address the resolution of council from last year.
Okay. Thanks, Nan. Thank you.
Okay, I'll move the motion seconded by Councillor Angela. we'll move into debate. Councillor Gary.
Thank you very much, and I have a prepared speech.
Is that not normal that the mover and or seconder goes first in the debate?
I'm very happy to go second or third or fourth.
Okay, I'm happy to forfeit my position. Angela, Councillor Angela.
I'm happy to go in the queue too.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Gary.
So I'm going first? Okay, do I get a right reply then?
No. Nice
okay. A is A. That is reality. 2 + 2 = 4. That is reality. Discrimination based on race is racism. That is reality. The proposition there is discrimination based on race, therefore it is racist. That is reality. Now, racism can be significant or it can be immaterial. The All Blacks is an example of racism that is immaterial. But racism in our democratic systems, racism in our system of government is fundamentally wrong. Actually, it's worse than that, it's evil. Now, there's no doubt our Maori All Blacks are selected on merit. Indeed, the All Blacks would not be as good as they are without our Maori and Pacific players. But there's absolutely no doubt that our Maori players are selected on merit. They are not All Blacks because they are Maori, they are All Blacks because they are very, very good rugby players. I've been selected on Hamilton City Council 3 times. 2 of those times I stood and was successful with Maori candidates. In 1998, Grant Thorburn was elected with me. In 2013, Karina Green was elected with me. In both instances, I didn't even know they were Maori. Now, tell you the truth, I don't care. They were good people and we had shared values. I certainly don't recall them running as Maori candidates, but they were very good candidates and they projected a message that enough voters of all races found compelling to gain their vote. To tell you the truth, I don't see people through skin colours or race. I look at their ideas, their energy, their character. Their race doesn't even come into it. And I think that's the way the great majority of our citizens thinks. Our citizens are not racist. They don't want Maori-only seats any more than they don't want Pākehā-only seats or Asian-only seats or Polynesian-only seats. Why do we have to destroy the one citizen, one vote principle and resort to the creation of Maori-only seats? In fact, this proposition has to be snuck in without a referendum precisely because the democratic response to Maori-only seats all over New Zealand has been a resounding no. A significant number of local authorities have run referendums on Maori-only seats, and in all instances, the democratic response was from the citizens, Maori, European, Pākehā, Polynesian, whatever, was no. They didn't want Maori-only seats. I will not support this proposal, and I'm sure neither will the citizens of Hamilton City. They didn't want Maori-only seats, and neither do I. And can I just address Dave's little query about selections to the Audit and Risk and Audit Committee? Those were selections made on merit. They were not selections made on race, for goodness sakes. A ridiculous comparison. Thank you.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. I'm going to make no apologies for supporting better Māori participation in local government, and we are actually talking about their involvement in some subcommittees at council. It's legally and ethically mandated, and it's also actually about best practice in the public sector. Local government have a Māori-focused group, Te Maruata, for example, because they know that they must deliver best practice. We've already mentioned the raft of legal and other precedents or reasons for doing this. The Queen's Royal Assent, the Local Government Act refers to it, the Resource Management Act refers to it, there's the Treaty of Waitangi, just to name just a few of the ways in which it's provided for in law. In my previous role, I've had a long experience in connection with this issue, and I've been part of talking about and forming a number of models, from co-governance to co-management, subcommittees, and we appointed, of course, 2 Māori seats on the Waikato Regional Council, and Tepa Mahuta remains the Deputy Chair of the Regional Council. It was really interesting to be reminded of Ngā Huia Haumi, and that existed at Council at one stage and was giving a voice to Māori concerns. It appears we have not been leading in this space in the recent times, and we've got to do something about that. The Human Rights Commission, for goodness sake, under its obligations to the United Nations, has identified the need to lift Māori participation in their own action plan. The benefits are many, and I could give many, many examples from my time at Waikato Regional Council, where our partnerships at every level from subcommittees, advisory boards to main council, delivered benefits. The benefits are many. Greater meaningful dialogue at a subcommittee level, because this is what we're talking about, will enable better social, cultural and economic well-being. These are the 4 well-beings that we're charged with on delivering by government. Partnership will bring shared ideas. I know this because I've seen it happen. It will also bring shared resources, and it will exclude no one.
Councillor Ryan.
I was at the opening of the celebrating or making Hamilton an age-friendly city the other day, and Dame Peggy said what's good for old people is good for all people. And so I acknowledge what's good for Māori people is people in the context that the rising tide lifts all boats. Today is a special day and an opportunity for Hamilton and Kirikiriroa. I acknowledge the work, the research, the consultation, the hui, our staff in particular, Leanne and Muna, and others have done over the last 14 odd months. Having had several discussions about process and context, I have confidence that the recommendation that has been put forward has been carefully navigated as the best way forward to have Māori representation and Māori voice on council. I believe we have a legislative, community and spiritual obligation to work collaboratively and to work together. I am pleased to hear from Rawiri and others that this is a mutual and unified proposal. I acknowledge the mention of no hui haumi, which was mentioned earlier, but submit that the proposal before us today is fit for purpose for today's context. I implore Māori, if given this opportunity, to use it and fan the flame. Use it to empower your people, use it to show leadership, and use it to show that your past doesn't define your future.
Councillor Jeff.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. To me, the most important thing that this council should be worried about is making great decisions. That should be our biggest priority, making great decisions. And surely in order to do that, we need as wide a variety of voices, experiences, views and backgrounds sitting around this table. I think you'd be pretty brave persons to suggest that we've actually got that at the moment around this table. There will always be different views on the best way to get this representation. We've had suggestions today about advisory committees or full standing committees. I'm fairly comfortable with this report that what we're getting today is the option which is most acceptable to the groups that we've consulted with over the last year. Local government has a clear legislative obligation to work in partnership with Māori. Some councillors may not like that, but it's true and it's our responsibility, and I take that seriously. There is plenty of precedent nationally and in this council for what we're talking about today for appointing people to committees which are part of the council to add to the experience, to add to the quality of that committee to make better decisions. I reject claims that we're somehow subjugating democracy here. In fact, I think we're actually strengthening it. I have no doubt about it. I think there's an element of this being blown into an emotive issue, and it was inevitable. There's a clear distinction here. We are not appointing elected members. We are not appointing councillors. And I know some councillors, McPherson, would like us to go a step further there at some point, but we are not doing that today. We are appointing people onto our subcommittees to help those subcommittees make the best possible decision, so this council makes the best possible decision. What the heck is wrong with that?
Councillor Dave.
Thanks. And I'd like to start by acknowledging the three speeches just beforehand, Jeff's and Ryan's and Paula's, that I certainly support what they've said. Thank you. As Jeff just alluded to, this actually isn't my first choice as the means to improve Māori involvement in decision-making in the city. That would be Māori seats, and that's something that works quite well at a national level, has been there for nearly 100 years, and doesn't look like it's going anytime soon. I want to comment on a couple of things that Gary said, where he said them loudly enough to try and convince us that they were facts, where he said, in every case, councils that have proposed Māori seats have had that overturned. There's actually 3 cases where that hasn't happened. One of them's brand new as well, but for a while now, the Waikato Regional Council, the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, have had Māori seats. The Manawatu District Council just a few months ago voted to bring them in from next election, and that was not overturned in a petition. And some of the petitions and referendums that have been held have been getting closer and closer. So I suggest that come another 5 years and you'll see big changes in that area as well. I believe that the opposition to having Māori involvement in our committees has actually got a racist tone on it. And I've looked up the Oxford this morning, the Oxford English Dictionary definition of racism: discrimination or antagonism directed against someone of a different race. And so the reason I apply that to some of the opponents, not all, of this move, is that we have other unelected members appointed to a committee of council. There was no opposition to them. As soon as race becomes the issue, there is this opposition and antagonism. Gary said they were appointed on merit. They weren't appointed on merit. Not everyone could apply. There were only accountants that were able to be considered. And if people think that's a definition of merit, fine, so be it. We already had 2 accountants on the committee, yourself and Councillor Pascoe. Now we've got 4. So I'm not convinced by Gary's argument in the slightest there. I would like to signal the intention to add in future, not at this point in time, a Mata Waka representative to the Growth and Infrastructure Committee. I think it's very important that wider Māori also have some direct input there as well. But overall, I'd like to say that this is a positive move, not a negative move. I think it's, as Jeff said, it's going to add to our decision-making ability. It's going to add to the ability to canvass the views and input from a wider section of the community than we're able to. The Māori members that we have had on this council, there's been 4 elected since I've been on council in the 7 elections that have been held out of 91 positions elected. That's all. That's nowhere near their proportion of population, I'm afraid.
Councillor Mark.
Yeah, I haven't been looking forward to this one because it's a really tough decision. I first of all want to acknowledge the great work that's been done. I acknowledge the passion in the room, thank you, and I acknowledge the unity that's been shown getting this far. I worry, and I think I might have hinted at it with my questioning, that we are close to something absolutely fabulous. I love this proposal. I think it will broaden diversity and the knowledge, and we talk about people being appointed on skill. This is skill that this sector of the community would bring, and it's legislation, so we're doing the right thing. My concern is, it's actually been reflected in a lot of comments today, and I've just been quietly writing down little quotes from today. Sean from the Hamilton Christian School came up and said, look, I've only got 3 minutes. I haven't got enough time. Most of our people speaking said, we've only got a few minutes. I haven't got enough time. I haven't been consulted. I think we're in danger of ruining something that could be fantastic. I think this will be fantastic, but I'm worried that we're not bringing the wider community along on the journey. What are we afraid of? What are we afraid of? I, for one, if we do go out to further consultation, if we had the opportunity, would be fully supportive of this, and I'll be selling it like a carpet-bagging salesman out the back of a wagon. I think it's fantastic. My concern is, by not giving people the choice, we're not following process, and ironically, and I certainly don't mean any offence by this, but when Rawiri brought up that the diversity of a debate is a good thing, we're actually missing an opportunity to have that diversity of debate. Up the entire Waitangi Tribunal, which is based on horrendous decisions being made forcefully without consultation in the past. Haven't we evolved from that? Aren't we actually in danger of doing something similar by pushing this through without consultation? Are we afraid to have that debate with the public? I'm not, and I'll go out and I'll defend this, but I want the public to buy into this, and I want them to be given a say. Yes, you're going to hear about from loud people with extreme views in this room, but there are people, and I've been reading the tea leaves, well, also the comment section of the Waikato Times, and no, it's not, but it's actually remarkably balanced. It's remarkably positive to the proposal, but we're not giving people that opportunity to speak. And while I think there's been tremendous, unprecedented unity in this process, and I congratulate you for it, I think we can go one step further. We have a great opportunity to get this right. Haven't we come too far not to go further? That's the quote that Margaret gave out from that book before. But we have come too far not to bring the community with us. We've got a great opportunity to get this right, and as a community, we're in danger of getting it wrong right at the tipping point. I'm not afraid of the debate. I sadly can't support it at the moment because I want to see more debate. I want to support it with the wider community involved.
Councillor Leo.
Yeah, look, I think we've got a great nation here in New Zealand. The only problem is, of course, is we don't promote ourselves enough. When I look at the ethnicity of this country, Maori make up 14.9%, make up 11.8%, which is only 3% behind Maori. Pacific peoples are making up 7.4%, and European are making up 74%. When I look at Hamilton, of course, Hamilton Maori are 21.3%, which is above the national average. Asian are 13.8%, which is above the national average again. People are 5.1%. And then we add in our 6,243 Indian people we've got here, we've got 5,613 Chinese people, and so the list goes on. I see this as really a community, and I don't really care whether the members of our community are Maori, whether they are Asian, whether they are Pacific peoples or whatever they are. And if I can get this right, I'm not too sure, but one of the sayings in Maori is that through the eye of the needle shall pass the brown, the yellow and the red through the one eye. I see us all as one people. So I've got a real issue in actually sorting out one section of our community to be seated, to having a seat at the various committees. And to tell you, truthfully, Finance Committee is not a hell of a lot of fun, that's for sure. It can be quite boring, believe it or not, Gary, you know. So it's not that exciting. But surely, as a community, it doesn't really matter what we are, and I would rather have the people out in our community actually ticking the box as to who they want to represent them around this council table, not actually having somebody actually dictating to us as to who will be seated at this particular table. So I'm in favour, of course, of having elected members only in the position of making the decisions within the committees as well as within the council. So I will be voting against the proposal.
Deputy Mayor Martin.
Yes, thank you. I just referenced one of our steam bells said that, you know, our history from 1350, I'm not sure this area, obviously New Zealand history, Aotearoa history is probably from 1280, 1250. I certainly have made recommendations to the Mayor in another capacity that we need to take advantage of as councillors and should be expected to have a deep and intimate knowledge of our Kirikiri or Hamilton's history from when habitation first started in this area, and I don't think we do enough of that. But as councillors, I have made a recommendation and I want us to follow that particular one up. There was a councillor in 1988 when the Te Runanga was established along with Ngā Hui Homi as a joint committee that shared my name, Martin Gallagher. And I'm aware that I'm a new councillor, but there's another councillor of the same name. And I'm just going to say this respectfully to staff. One of the things you have on a team, Mr Chief Executive, you have people with some institutional knowledge. I make myself available. I have a perspective, and I make myself available. And why I raise that is because I want to pay particular honour and tribute to my former colleague, Councillor Perehira Kaio, who was the equivalent of the chair of the Important Community Services Committee, had amazing leadership with Noli Nuttall, and also was a co-chair of Ngā Hui Homi as well. I also want to acknowledge people who should have talked to is our former mayor, who I serve with, Margaret Evans. We didn't, as Margaret will say with wry humour, no, we didn't always see eye to eye sometimes, but Margaret, as a former mayor, has mega institutional knowledge of the history, and I'm really regretful, and I think the report is very interesting and quite comprehensive in some ways, but I think it is the poorer, I am actually going to just give me one more minute, the poorer for not speaking, and that's one of the reasons that I am going to vote in a way that may surprise some people. I genuinely believe that the standing committee model has not been given adequate consideration. I genuinely believe that the Ngā Hui Homi model is a better one personally, and I think it has not been fully explored, and that's the one that I strongly favour, because I believe for a range of reasons it would give us a greater diversity of input, and it wouldn't be a token advisory committee, it would be a full standing committee of council. However, I recognise, just listening to the debate, that the trend has gone in a different direction, which I respect. So I don't want to stand in the way of that at this late stage. I also recognise that each triennium of council determines its governance structure. And I think we have to be a little bit careful. You know, when we're talking about consultation, when Julie Hardacre set up her committee structure, the council ticked it off. When Mayor King set it up, we didn't talk necessarily about consultation. I'm not being rude. Probably the best consultation is at the next triennial election, and we certainly didn't go to a massive, you know, when it talked about the audit and risk. However, I do honestly believe that the Ngā Hui Homi model is a better one. Notwithstanding, as a deputy mayor and elected member, if the majority goes for this particular model, then that will enjoy my full support, and I'll work with it. And obviously we know at the end of the triennium, I'm still going to keep alive a different model, but I'll see how this one goes. Thank you.
Councillor Angela.
Thanks, Mayor Andrew. I'm going to touch on something a little bit different. 125 years ago in New Zealand, women won the right to vote. These women in our region were champions for their people, their communities and their whānau, and for our future. One of these pioneering New Zealand Waikato women was Princess Te Puia. Through historical research, my team for Waikato 125, which will be celebrating suffrage this year, we are sharing stories of Waikato women who came before us. Princess Te Puia was 11 years old on the day New Zealand won the right to vote, and even though originally, as a young woman, she wasn't keen to accept her rightful role as a member of the King's movement, as time went on, she grew up into a young woman, and her passion for her people won her over. In 1936, Princess Te Puia formed a relationship through letters with a Mr. James Cohen from Auckland. In her letters to him, she wrote, "Our hands are stretched out. There is a gleam of light through the dark clouds." She went on to dedicate her life working to build those partnerships. She championed the rights of not only her people, but the people of the Waikato. We should continue her work. I want to continue her work, to be willing to continue to build those partnerships, to work together to build relationships, and in her words, with outstretched hands.
So firstly, I want to thank iwi, hapu, Matawaka, mana whenua for working closely with our staff. Mana, Tamai, Paul, Leanne and your team to bring this document together. I'll be voting in support of the motion because I believe that's the right thing to do for our city and our country. As Māori shareholders are telling us that having a voice is important to them. I strongly believe that Māori representation is important, and I have thought that ever since I was a child. Our iwi, hapu and Matawaka want to work in partnership with us for the benefit of Kirikiriroa. Iwi and mana whenua have been here for many, many years, and they are going to be here for many, many years to come. They aren't going anywhere. They have a commitment to the city, and it's a long-term commitment. They don't see for one generation. They see for many generations to come, and they remember many generations of those from the past. Matawaka, Maori, mana whenua marry other waka who have chosen to make their home in Kirikiriroa have also committed to the well-being of our city and into the future. Māori make a strong economy socially, culturally, and their contribution to Hamilton and our region. They have skills, they have experience, and they have perspectives that add to the value of the decision making and for the benefit of all the people of Kirikiriroa, not just for Māori. The council has a responsibility, like all local authorities under the Local Government Act, to provide opportunities for Māori to participate in the decision making in our city. I firmly believe those opportunities should be meaningful. Meaningful to me means Māori have at our committee tables as a whole, and it means having a voting right in our committees. Anything less than that is just lip service. Anything less means this council is not doing all it can to the partnership that we have and the obligations that we have. The project team has done a huge amount of work on this for over a year. They have looked at what other councils do. They have researched different models. They have talked to people about what works and what doesn't in other areas. They have worked collaboratively with Māori stakeholders and national experts to ensure that we have a robust process in place to make this work. They have done a great job, and their recommendation is to appoint Māori representatives with voting rights to our council committees. This is a model that they consider will be the right model for this council, and I do too. These appointments will not be elected members. The rights and privileges of elected members. They will be committee members, and the role description staff have developed sets out their responsibilities to council very clearly. Maori fully understand the importance of making a positive contribution, committed to making that work. I know some councils around our country would prefer to avoid making these decisions about Māori representation. I am really proud that this council has been brave enough to have this conversation. This is a governance decision, and we are entitled to make this decision. And I really hope that we see this through and give Māori a voice. We'll go to the board to vote.
The motion is carried 6-4, 4 against.
We'll break for lunch until 1:30.
Mr Mayor.
Not sure. Do you need to get away? What do you want? Do you want online voting as soon as
I'm pretty cool with everything. On voting if you could, which is the next one I think. I think it's the next one anyway.
Okay. Right.
But I've got to, I'll be just got to pick the boys up from school, take them home, and then I'll come back. So it'll be a half.